Hello, Playdate. This is Ryan C.
This is Ryan S.
This is Ryan K. And this week we're talking about Spellcorked art,
Spellcorked animation,
and figuring out how to keep all these Ryans straight. Thank you for listening, and let's get started. Okay, so this is not Nick, this is not Don, but it is Ryan and Ryan and Ryan. And if in case the show notes or the title hasn't alerted you to this already, we are doing an interview episode today about Spellcorked art specifically. So this is a season 1 Playdate game release, and in my humble opinion, it has the best darn art package of any season 1 game release out there. And so as an artist, I was very excited about that and reached out to the person credited with the artwork, who is Ryan Kingdom. So Ryan Kingdom, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And when I did that, Ryan Kingdom said, "Oh, thank you so much. But you know what? This game would not be what it is without Ryan Splendorr." So Ryan Splendorr, welcome to the Helloplaydatepodcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm hoping we can dive into maybe a very minor overview of how games have affected each of you personally, how you came to the Playdate and got involved in season 1. And then I'd really like to dive into the artwork and how that came to be in Spellcorked. So Ryan K, maybe we can refer to one another by our last name initials today. So Ryan K, who is credited with artwork on Spellcorked. Can you tell us just a little bit about your gaming background and maybe how you got introduced to the Playdate in early stages?
Oh gosh, yeah. Love to. So my gaming background, I first played Super Mario 64 when I was 6 years old. My dad bought the Nintendo 64 as like a cool new toy. And brought Mario in there. And I think from there, I mean, it was just, I was so taken with just these strange little worlds, these funny little guys that you can move around and explore, stuff that, you'd never seen before. That just took me all the way to here. Completely enraptured with everything that a game could offer in terms of interacting with these really lush environments is what really brought me to them.
It's so true. I was watching my son play Mario Odyssey just the other day and thinking, my gosh, this is so fleshed out. It feels so realized,
It's beautiful.
And I think you guys have done that with Spellcorked. I think you've created such a realized environment and world, and it's one of the reasons why I've got you guys here. So speaking of which, Ryan Splendorr, can you give us a little overview of your introduction to gaming as well?
Sure. Games have, for me as well, kind of been just a part of my life as long as I can remember. I will go back one step further than Ryan Kingdom. I can kind of remember my first vivid memory of video games, and the thing that I latched onto was Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. And I was also, I think, around 6 when that came out. And so Mario kind of is the usher of the generations, right? In terms of video games, every time one is released, it sets a benchmark. And Super Mario World is kind of, where I first saw that you could a different type of visual imagery that I had never experienced before. Pixel art was such a different looking mechanism for delivery than standard animation of the time, of live action, of anything like that, right? And you kind of got this general sense of a vivid place, but you had to fill in the details, right? And that was what was exciting about that in terms of just being able to say, oh, I see that there, but I don't my eyes can't really process details, so you come up with kind of that thing. So it's a little bit of the same thing that you get when you have when you're reading a book, right, where you have to imagine it yourself. You get a little bit of that, but you're ushered along the way with video games. And so Super Mario World was kind of the first one I can remember. I will say that Breath of Fire for the Super Nintendo was also one of my favorites back at the time, which was a big introduction to the like fantasy genre in and of itself. And that series has kind of led me through the years as well, with some of the most beautiful pixel art that I can name in video games throughout the years as well. And so I kind of got started there, and our family was just the kind that like our dad was very much into technology and always had new computer parts and all the newest stuff there. So it was kind of one of his hobbies that he introduced, of saying like, oh, I just want to see what the new thing is, what technology can bring us. And that was kind of the vector was always video games. Like, and that's kind of the interesting thing about them, is that they're always kind of at the forefront of technology in a certain way. And I'll piggyback off what you said, Ryan K., which is that it's video games are kind of that art form that encapsulates everything about what technology can do. It's the most chaotic of technologies, right? Because you unleash these worlds for people to live in, and then they break it. And then it's like, it has constraints, but you don't want it to have constraints, but it ends up having it. And so it's this super interesting push and pull of like, what can you deliver? What can you give to them? And then what can they kind of pull out of it themselves as well?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, without mentioning our ages, I feel like we have 3 generations of video games here, because we started with Ryan K. in the N64 Mario, went back to Super Nintendo and Mario World with you, and I got my start around the same age, 6, with Super Mario Brothers on the NES.
Hey.
There we go.
It is interesting how that IP is really, as you said, a benchmark. It really sets the stage for what gaming can and should be. It's incredible. Okay, waxing Mario aside, let's move into how each of you found out about and got involved with your season 1 game for the Playdate, Spellcorked.
Sure. I can, I guess, start that off. I think as I was kind of like, we were able to pull Ryan Kingdom in for this game once it was underway, and very much realized from that. But I guess how I got involved with that was, I think I heard about the Playdate when it was initially announced as a thing 7-8 years ago at this point. When Panic came out and said, hey, we're going to do this thing, and it made a little bit of a splash. And so I kind of knew what the hardware was. But eventually from there, I kind of loosely followed it. And my trajectory in video games was that we got involved with some teams that we would go to conventions with and help kind of share their game with the people going to the convention. Which started with what is now Tunic. We were asked by our friend Felix Kramer to come and put on some Fox onesies and promote Tunic to the crowd and just tell them about what this game was supposed to be. And so we got to go to a PAX and kind of just be goofy animals for a weekend and expound the virtues of this really cool looking game that was just under development by Dicey, and turned out to be a phenomenal thing over the years. And so we got involved with that, and eventually Felix was helping out on the Playdate as a producer at the time, and they told us that we could pitch a game. They were open for pitches, and our friend Jada Gibbs was kind of the originator of this idea. She had always wanted to make some video game about witches, about brewing potions, about, like, she has a deep love for plants and vegetation and the world around and magic on top, right? And so, my brother and her kind of bandied around some, just like, oh, well, of course you could use the crank to stir a potion, right? Like that's the most basic interaction that you could do. And they were hanging out with Felix at the time, and Felix said, "Oh no, yeah, sure. Why don't you just make that game?" And we said, "Okay, cool." And so it was kind of Nick and Jada that got that started, and eventually reached out to me to say, "Hey, of course, I had been doing pixel art for primarily for four-ish years at that point, just as kind of a hobby, and we had made some smaller games as a little team just for fun, but had kind of grown into that. And they were like, of course, if you want to help out with this, please let's put together a pitch deck and get that going. And we did that, and the Panic people said they loved the idea, and so I started on the kind of ideation of it, and it was probably 6 months into it that we reached out to Ryan Kingdom, and I had done a lot of the initial visual, I don't know, kind of just trying to tell the story, but didn't know exactly where to take it yet. And Ryan Kingdom has some of my favorite art and my brother's favorite art that we've ever seen. And when you have an artist that you can just look at it, and anytime you see an image from them, your heart just grows a little bit, and you go, "Oh, that's so cute." We reached out and got them involved to help kind of flesh out a couple of key areas around the game that needed an extra touch to it, right? Which were the main character, all the items that you get as you go through the game, as well as the logo itself for the game. And so I think we started with the main character, and then came back for seconds and thirds with the logo and the items, just because it's, how can you turn that down? And needed that pizzazz that Ryan Kingdom brings. So that's how we got Ryan involved. So you can kind of take it from there, I think.
So I want to hear all about Ryan K's side of this. But Ryan S., you mentioned something that I wanted to touch on before I forget. You said that you do pixel art also. I haven't seen this. Can you tell me a little bit about this? About your involvement? Yes, about your involvement in pixel art.
Yeah. So, well, to be clear, all of the pixel art that's in the game Spellcorked is from me. And so I've been doing pixel art on the side, just picked it up. Like I said, I had a love for it for a long time, and was wanting to play around in video game spaces and try to make that a thing. And so I worked with my brother on some smaller games, like I said, for a number of years before that became kind of the main thing that I like to do. I do all sorts of other art and whatnot, but this one I latched onto because it kind of has a very rigid structure that you have to adhere to, but allows for a lot of expressiveness in ways that other art, I found it easier to deliver, at least. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess that's how I got it started. And it was kind of my job on Spellcorked to build out the world. And then once we had Ryan Kingdom's input, I had the fantastic opportunity to translate these luscious paintings that he did into pixel art and kind of find the medium and expression that I could use to translate that pretty quickly.
So interesting. Yeah. Okay, I want to get into all this. Ryan K., can you please give us your side of all this? I want to hear how you got brought on, how you approach your artwork for this, and then eventually how that gets translated into pixel art. I'm so interested in all this.
Sure. Yeah, let's see. So I was friends with Ryan S.'s brother, Nick, just through the few years I spent posting a lot of Sonic the Hedgehog fan art on Twitter mostly. And the team just approached me. It felt kind of out of the blue for me. It was 2020, and it was the first time I was starting to get work on like these larger projects. And so when they approached me and said, here's the concept for the game, here's this cute witch and these fun item ideas, and I was sold from the first. Say no more. Like I'm in. I would love to. And it was just such a fun opportunity to be allowed to take the reins in terms of some like main character like design decisions and game assets and stuff like that I was just so grateful to be given so much like fun material to play with, and to sort of like with the key art illustration, try to figure out, it was one of the first times I was really learning to figure out like how do all of these things fit together in a space, and how do we communicate the significance to the player who would be the player, and I wanted to make art for games for years. So it was just perfect.
It sounds like a match made in heaven.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
It really was.
So when you first got started, Ryan K, what was the first thing they asked of you? What was the first illustration you did for this? And in what medium are you working at this point?
Oh gosh, yeah. So first was the design of the main character, the witch, which was really cute. I'm really happy with what we ended up with. And that pretty much everything I do at this point is in Clip Studio Paint. I will occasionally open Photoshop for some quick editing things that I can probably do in Clip Studio, but I don't know how, and I haven't figured out how. So I just do it in Photoshop. So I may have done some sketches, just pencil and paper. And I remember like working from some photos that I had taken of my sketchbook. So, but everything finished was all digital.
Okay, so it sounds like Ryan K is digitally painting this artwork in full color, black and white. Like, what does this look like when you hand it over to Ryan S?
Oh yeah, let's see. So it depended on the asset. For the I think for the items, we kept them black and white. One reason being there were so many of them that figuring out, I think, individual color palettes was not something that we had in the time frame for a series of assets that were going to be in grayscale and only seen in grayscale anyway. Whereas pretty much everything else was done with full color in mind at the outset. Although I do, just as a matter of habit, often switch to grayscale while I'm painting, just to make sure that the values are leading the eye correctly, and that nothing is, getting too muddy or lost or whatever.
And you did deliver those to us as well, right?
Yes.
We kind of wanted to see both because of the medium, right? The Playdate being black and white in and of itself. It was helpful to have both the mental image of the color association for feeling, but to be able to also kind of translate that and do more of the what I would call on the game for your artwork was draftsmanship that I had to do in the pixel art, right? Because I was doing a translation. Your stuff was so good that I wanted to capture that feel as closely as I could. And the black and white definitely helped with that.
So yeah, Ryan S., take us through that a little bit. Once Ryan K. sends you these digital paintings, be it black and white or grayscale or color, whatever he sends you, what were you receiving mostly? And then I'm guessing what Ryan K. sent you was far higher resolution than what the Playdate can show you on its limited screen, on this 1-bit screen. So when you receive this high-res grayscale or multicolor digital painting, what are you then doing to translate it to pixel art? Are you pixel tracing over top of things, or please walk me through that process?
Yeah, sure. So the Playdate itself is at a 400 by 240 resolution. So high res for that type of thing, right? But that's very low res comparatively. And so I would kind of, I think I did it a couple of different ways with the different assets that Ryan K. delivered. The most direct translation that I did was all of the ingredients, and that's what you see that show up on the shelves, that get shown in the grimoire pages, that get put down in the little like inventory icons when you select them, and what goes into the tools themselves, right? And so there were the most direct translation that I did was, I think for a lot of the beginning ones at least, I would take his artwork and I would shrink it down to fit on the 400 by 240 and see what the pixelation did on its own, right? And see what details popped out when they got decreased in size. And then from there, it was kind of a selective pick and choose which of those details made sense and which got compressed in a weird way and kind of had to fill in the blanks itself. So I did a kind of a fair amount of both pixel tracing over the general shape once it was at the correct size that I wanted it in the game to fit on the screen based on where it was. And that required a kind of it was a pick and choose. Like I said, the grimoire and the item selection screen where you see these high res versions of them were fairly, I did a lot of sketching over the drawings to start with. And then I had at that time had either created or needed to create to simulate the depth on the screen. Everything is done with kind of simulating gradients and whatnot with dithering patterns. And so I work primarily in a program called Sprite, which is for pixel art specifically, and is a wonderful program that has been in development for a long time that caters directly to that crowd and has a lot of useful tools that aids placing the pixels in a nice and appropriate kind of layout. And within that, I had to create, so I would create square dither patterns, which are kind of like various levels of stacking the pixels right to simulate a gradient. And I would go through and I think once Ryan Kingdom got involved was when I really increased the depth of all of the assets in the game, I think, right? Because you kind of have to start from this mode of like, how do you think about a singular, black pixel on a white screen? And we did a lot of tests where we were working with white pixels on a black screen, right? To start with, like you kind of get different feels there. And we ended up including that in the grimoire. So we'll show, oh, this is mysterious. This is something like a little more unearthly. But I kind of had to create these dither patterns, and I would sketch the outlines of the ingredients for the high-res version ones, and then kind of fill that in with the appropriate dithers to get this kind of like depth and look and feel and shine. One of my favorite was the meteorite crystal to work on that just had this luster to it, right? And I had to go, how do you make that happen in pixels though? Like what's the thing that makes that happen? And then from there, the rest of the assets that were based off of that look were purely just like eyeballing those high-res pixel versions that I did, and then kind of taking the cues, because a lot of the rest of those items in the game are much smaller, 32 by 32 or 64 by 64, roughly speaking, for all those that had to fit like on the shelf and all that. And so that was more of me putting my own spin on it for pixels only, right?
Very interesting. So a couple of the things I think are such standout characteristics of the art of Spellcorked are, one, the details that are included. For example, the transitions between scenes, moving from the computer to the grimoire to the ingredients, or the ingredients to the sleeping quarters. And there are interstitial scenes in there that you're only seeing in the swipe, in the transition. Mm-hmm. And I found myself like going back and forth just to try to get a better sight on those, because there's so many interesting details in there, like a holder full of wands and plants hanging and all sorts of different stuff. So Ryan K, can you talk to me about that a little bit? I'm guessing that's largely you, or were you asked to make these interstitial scenes, or how did that all work out?
So Ryan S definitely crafted the scenes as you see them in the game. And
nice job, Ryan K.
and I was given sort of, I think, a lot of like, one of the great things about this project, and what I like working on projects like this, is getting in a room where everybody's throwing like, a billion fun ideas around, and then going through and working out how can I put all these elements together in a way that feels cohesive, and also just fill in everything with something fun to look at. I very much come from a illustration perspective of just, I want to put as many fun little tidbits in there as I can without overwhelming the viewer. But because of, and I think part of this comes to games, is, one of my favorite things about video games is that exploration, that discovery of something that feels, secretive, or feels easily overlooked. And so anytime I am putting an illustration together, I'm just thinking about, what are all the things that I can get away with? What's some fun stuff that I can put in every corner to, if nothing else, entertain myself while I have to work on something for 20 hours or whatever. And if other people end up noticing it and have fun with it too, then great. But Ryan S. and the team were, one of the things that they were able to give me was like a layout of like, here are the like main game screens. Here's what is going to be featured. Here's the screen with the computer. Here is the grimoire. We're going to be having the player, cycle through each of these in like roughly this order. And it really gave me a perspective when I was putting like the key art together of like, okay, if the in theory, if a player is standing in a space and they are moving, around, like they're looking at this and they're looking like so it builds a room, and so suddenly you have all of these furniture elements, and just as you're adding, okay, so well, here's their computer. I think the fun part of that is always just, what kind of person is this and what do they have? What do they keep around them? And so for, a character like the witch who is just trying to get by in this gig economy kind of stuff, things like, piles of stuff left around that they haven't gotten around to, or, item ingredients on the shelves, or this, I was thinking about, those little vases that people put umbrellas in. It was like, well, that's perfect for magical stabs and such like. And you just kind of have fun sort of building everything up from there.
Very cool. So Ryan S., it sounds like you gave Ryan K. a basic layout of the various screens that I just mentioned a moment ago.
Mhm.
And it sounds like maybe you had planned some interstitial areas like, hey, Ryan K., please fill this space, even though it's not going to be a main screen. Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, a little bit. And it's interesting to think back on that, right? The first couple of months of development where it was just Jada, Nick, and I working on this thing to get it off the ground, to figure out what the concept was, what the world was, what was existing where, like what is this space, right? We actually have, like, Jada is a very prolific sketchbooker, where she likes to go in and just do little doodles that are the cutest thing that I've ever seen. And she always goes, oh, here's just a little idea. And I always look at it and go, oh, I know what to do with that, right? And so within her sketches, a lot of time was actually spent trying to figure out spatially how to present this game, right? Because you come in with the idea, you're a witch just out of witch college, you're brewing potions, you're sending them off via some method, they have to get delivered. All these things are kind of like these unknown quantities when you start to build a world. And so what we did was focus primarily on, where would she live? Like, what is the contents of this place? How magical should it be? How realistic should it be? What's the perspective even, right? And I was going back through all of the art that we did last night, just trying to remember through, and we did so many like perspective shifts of how you viewed this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was very some of the earliest sketches that I did in Pixels, where we were using to prototype this kind of like circular motion that Nick came up with, where he was like, he had to put it into the game for us to really get it, because we didn't know if you were going to have a character moving around at all, if you were going to kind of whatever. And he said, no, I think we're going to be looking around the room, but it's going to be presented like this. And so I had to do some initial sketches to kind of like fill out this essentially panorama view of the house. And they were all like, isometric tilted views of, like, you could see up the tables and all this thing, so you could like have room to place things, and which we kept a little bit, but it kind of morphed into this, like, you're looking dead on and you have the perspective going into the background straight ahead. And so a lot of time was spent, Jada has like blueprints essentially drawn of the initial, like, how would this fit together from like a top down view, like where do things go, and we went through a lot of iterations of that. And then once we kind of had that settled a little bit, that's when I got to get in there and start to fill it out with some of these like basic decorations and things like that. And so it was a really interesting thing. I think we had the rooms mostly set at that time, like the viewpoints mostly set. They were actually, each of the screens was just the size of the Playdate screen, so 400 by 240 initially. And we handed these off to Ryan Kingdom. They came back with the wonderful key art, where we said, have fun with this. Like, anything that you throw in here might help, fill out the game world, fill out the liveliness of this place, and stuff like the swords and the canes and the things like that were sitting in the potted in the pot that kind of thing, like were loosely in the background. And I took those and said, that's super fun. And so then I built upon that and added like more of these like weapons and things that like she might have collected through her journeys through college, that kind of thing. Right. And, you know, the story I was trying to tell with the environment to begin with was like, she is just out of college. She's trying to get by. It's the, you know, potion cake economy shop. She's living in this space pretty much all the time. Right. And she's, magicking away these potions to be delivered. So there's not even a front door to the place if you look around, right? We thought there was going to be a big front door at one place, at one point in the development, and we got rid of that because we said, she probably just teleport in and out of there, right? Like it's you don't need to have that. And so the only look that you get into the outside world is the kind of window where you end the night. And that's where you kind of get these glimpses of like little animations and monsters that exist out of the world. But we wanted to keep it very insular and tell her story through the decoration in the room. And so it was kind of like, she's super neat and very good at her job. Everything is very like, for the most part, interestingly curated and in nice places and on display, but she does have these like messy piles around, and she has all that. And a lot of that was like, helped out by Ryan Kingdom's key art, just saying like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you can put some little touches here, you can add this stuff and it adds life. And you did a really great job helping kind of fill out the life of the place.
Yeah, that's what what was so fun about working on this was that kind of back and forth of just continuing to build off of what everybody was kind of bringing to the world. It's just so cool.
It's so fascinating, you know, when you see a byline art by Ryan Kingdom, and I emailed Ryan and he's like, thank you so much, but you know what? This wouldn't have been what it is without Ryan S. I was a little confused. And I feel like this is kind of getting demystified a little bit, and even more interesting because I hear that Ryan S. is also contributing items to those interstitial scenes and doing a lot of translation of pixel art, but it all feels so cohesive, like it was done by a single person, you know? So I want to congratulate both of you on this really cohesive world that you've built. Last time I asked a question, I said there was a couple of things that really stood out to me. One was all that detail, and the other, where's the animations? So the animations in here are bonkers from the very start, when the cattail magics wipe into existence and brings you into that world, to the various I'm gonna ruin the names, but the animals that you have in the little jars, and then they have a little animation and make a magical thing happen. Please tell me the right words. But anyway, those animations, all of them are so incredibly charming, top to bottom. It just felt so fleshed out and a joy to experience all of this. So can you take me behind the scenes a little bit and deconstruct how all that animation took place? Ryan K, are you giving keyframe animations, or Ryan S, are you doing the animations yourself, or how's all this working out?
That is all Ryan S.
Huh. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah,
please tell us all about it.
Yeah, so like I said, animation has kind of been my main vector in the art world for as long as I can remember, right? Like that's what I honed in on. That's my favorite thing about video games. I'm a huge animation geek as well, just in general, in terms of like anything that's animated, I'll get my hands on it. I like to dissect that. And it wasn't, I think I did that passively as a kid, right? And when I got to college, I took some courses and had one guest lecturer that was an animator from The Sims, and gave us the availability to use like Maya and just do some fun animations for the class, right? And I kind of fell in love with it from there. And so that's always been kind of my forte that I bring to art, right? Like I consider myself a pretty good sketch artist, I can do painting. I'm a very good, I think I use the word draftsman. I can take other people's stuff and translate it into different forms very, very easily. But my favorite thing is to make a thing move. And that's what we wanted to do with the game itself. And what Nick and Jada wanted to empower me with on terms of the pixel art was saying, we gotta build the world out, but we also like, we know you can make things bouncy and juicy and move, and like bring that, like throw that in wherever you can. And so it was a lot of work was put into, like I said, getting the world to feel right to begin with, understanding what the basic gameplay was. We were all involved with that piece of it to start with before any of the visuals really got involved, and figuring out like how many different tools would you use, how many mini games should you have, what would those involve, and then what's the world like. And so every step of the way, it was kind of just a, wherever you can put in something nice that's moving, let's do it, right? So the cat's name is Bomare. Everybody's got a name in the game. Loon is the name of the witch, just so you know. She's amazing. We don't feature her very many places. You get to see her sleeping primarily when she goes to bed at night, and that kind of thing. But she's kept primarily to the key art and outside of that. But what we really wanted to showcase was the like kind of creatures and friendly animals that you interact with. And so Bomare was a staple of the game from the beginning. Jada and Nick have both been longtime cat lovers and owners. I didn't have a cat yet at the time. My cat is sitting here with me now because halfway through the game, I went, how can I not have one? I love these creatures. They're great. And so he was kind of he sits above the grimoire on one of the scenes, and he's just sleeping most of the time, right? Like he's not doing anything other than talking to you every once in a while and lazing around. And so that was kind of some of the earliest animation experiments we did were just within the navigation scenes themselves. And it was kind of my mandate that I wanted something moving or something to change on every one of those environment screens, just to give a little bit of life to the environment and not have it just be, it would be nice if they were static images, but if we can bring some life to it, that's great. And so Bomare was one of the first ones that was very simple animation in terms of him sitting there. And then it kind of, as we developed the game and more assets began to get added, the game becomes bigger, a little bit slower to load and all that. And we realized that there needed to be a loading screen into the game itself for it to be ready. And we kept running into these issues of like, oh man, it's taking like 5 or 6 or 7 seconds or whatever, right, to like get everything loaded into the game the way we're doing it. And something needs to be there. So that was the one animation that I chose to go, I'm going to do some, we're going to do this starting in like a traditional 24 frame Disney approach to this loading screen animation. So it's the highest resolution and highest frame rate of anything in the game. And I spent a long time on that going, okay, let me just get the cat, let me get Bomare moving first. And I did a lot of like just watching videos of cats walking across the screen and doing the motion study of that. And then it eventually kind of, we had a lot of different ways that we morphed into the opening of the shop. But one of the most like directly magical things was I had Bomare drawn out and I said, okay, then why doesn't he just rip open the universe? Like let's just pull the universe open to get him there. And what better than his tail swishing across. And so that was a super fun one to kind of go through the process. And every stage of that was a different looking experiment in how to get that across. I can't remember even how many, there's something like 100 something frames and that one that kind of goes across.
Yeah, you nailed that. It ended up being so fluid and such a
Mhm.
perfect introduction into the game
Right.
world.
Mhm.
Really nicely done.
I
Mhm.
appreciate that.
So I have a couple questions before we wrap things up. First, do you have any of this production art that you'd be willing to share with us? You talked about some pre-panning environmental artwork and like different ways that you had of conceptualizing the game before landing on what it was. Would you be willing to share any of that publicly?
I don't see why not, right? I'll check with the team to make sure, like I said, some of it are sketches from Jada's sketchbook. And various things like that. I'm open. One of my favorite things about art that is kind of demystifying the process, right?
Yeah.
And showing how much it takes to get to what you look at, right? Like pixel art is unassuming to a lot of people. They go, it's smaller. There's not a lot that's going on here. But I had legitimate, like, almost goosebumps, right? Looking through all the stuff that we did on the game last night, especially as just a review, to go like, what all did we do? And just going like, oh man, this thing looked so different for a long time.
I'll bet.
And it looked really, it looks crappy to start with. if you to be honest, right? Like just little stupid looking characters in various places and not really knowing the form or the shape of anything, that then turns into what it is now is one of my favorite things. So I wouldn't mind. I'll show you. I'll share any of the pixel art that you want, because that's what I touched, and we should absolutely share all of Ryan Kingdom's delicious drawings, because I'm not even sure that anybody has access to in the public to all of the like high res ingredients that you did. That might be in a press package somewhere, but like
I think there are some just on my portfolio site that I put up, but
sure.
Other than that,
But I would love to share all those, including the like. We went through a process with Ryan K to get Loon created, the main character, and so they're like, he did multiple options, and they were all shapes and sizes and different, different body types and decoration and all that. So yeah, I would love to share any and all of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll dig around in my computer and try to find where those are buried.
Awesome. I would love to share that with the Playdate community if you guys are willing. I'm very interested in process work as well. I mean, I'm a teacher. I teach art, and so I think we're very aligned in that. Finally, just to wrap things up, I know you mentioned starting on this way back in 2017, Ryan K, 2020-ish, and here it's finally come out in 2022. It's been a long time. What are you guys working on now? Anything you want to tell folks about?
Gosh, Ryan S., would you like to go first?
In terms of that, there's not a lot that I can openly talk about, right? We've talked about doing new games. This took a lot of effort, and we kind of are all involved in various things at this point. I'm currently working more professionally as a like UI and UX architect on software right now. So it's not glamorous things like a video game, but that's kind of been my focus for a little bit, and we're trying to circle back around sooner than later to what's the next game. So
will that game be a Playdate game?
It could quite possibly be one. I would be open to doing it. It's one of those things where like we're all familiar with the systems. It would be fun. I think it would take the right idea for us to all be excited about doing that specific process again, because there is part of the Playdate experience that was incredible was its limitations, right? And it's like very, very, very strict adherence to a certain like finding a style within the smaller environment, and also like programming in the thing. You have a lot of stuff that you have to watch out for, and like just in terms of processing power and how you actually create the assets for all this, right? And so part of the allure probably is to say, yeah, but what if we move to something bigger? What if we do something else? I also see the benefits of saying, I love the Playdate. This thing is amazing. It's cute, and you can't get these things elsewhere. And I find that fascinating personally. And so I would be open to doing another Playdate game, but it's only if they let us, you know.
Ryan K, what are you up to these days?
Let's see. I'll plug a couple things. So let's see. I have some artwork in an upcoming tabletop RPG, Apocalypse Keys, which is now on Kickstarter. I also have a comic in the works for an upcoming comics anthology called One Shot After the End. It's a post-apocalyptic anthology coming to Kickstarter sometime in the next month, I think. Like late September / October or so. And then I I won't say too much about it yet, but I am noodling away at a graphic novel project with my good friend Caleb Zane Hewitt, author of Buster and Buster Undercover. He's great, and we are very excited, but there's still a lot of dev work to be done. So still very early.
Wow, Ryan Kingdom, I'm very excited to hear about all this comic stuff. As a cartoonist, I know I'm biased,
every
but
single one of those
yeah,
Oh, gosh.
totally. I just read through let's see, Bottle
Bottle Drops.
Bottle Drops and the Dark Sonic zine that was like basically a big comic called oh gosh, I'm forgetting the title already. Please help me.
It's called Faker. It's
Faker.
My very, very genuine fanzine about Shadow the Hedgehog.
I was really surprised at how like existential and personalized you were able to, you know, bring to that character. I thought that was really interesting. I was reading through that just before our interview, and like, yeah, this is good stuff. So I'm excited about all your upcoming comic work. And if you want to give us some Kickstarter URLs, we can toss those in the show notes for today's episode as well.
Yes, I will get you some URLs for some websites.
Cool. Sounds good. So listeners, show notes for today's episode, we'll have some Kickstarter URLs for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, anything else you guys want to let Playdate listeners know about before we sign off here? You've got a platform.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing that I didn't get to broach when talking about the animation stuff was the Alembic, right? It's the combination where you see all the creatures in the bottles.
Yes.
That's my favorite part of the game, so you should check it out if you haven't.
Yeah.
But second of all, they all have names, and they deserve to be known. The electric deer's name is John. Jahn.
Really good.
The little piggy is named Mia. The little frog is named Roberto.
Really good.
Perfect.
The space whale is named Walter. The little merman is named Mortal, and the little bird is named Freya.
So. That's
so
good.
I can get the connection of Roberto, but what are all the other named connections? Do you know a deer named John, or like how did all this get named?
John Deere.
Of course.
So
I can't believe
each of these were kind of little jokes as I was sitting working on. Each of those little orbs took so many hours
I can't even imagine.
And actually get feeling correct in there. And so I had to sit with them for a long time. And so they just each needed to have a name, and the inspiration struck in different places at different times, some at 2 a.m., some at 9 a.m. But yeah, they all have they're little jokes, but also very dear to my heart. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And
Absolutely.
also thank you both for spending your time with us here today. I can't wait to share your work, your process, your thoughts with our listeners. And I've been an admirer of your game since I opened it, since the Playdate unwrapped that digital package for me. I was really quite taken with this. So thank you for sharing your time today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Means a lot.
It really appreciate it. It's been wonderful.